Hi everybody, welcome back to my studio in Barcelona. Tonight I want to talk about a very special and cool plugin called RootOne from Leapwing Audio. Now, what is RootOne? RootOne is a very specialistic plugin. It's a plugin that is designed to generate subharmonic and upper harmonic content out of a certain input signal. And it does that in a very precise, very phase coherent and very good sounding way as we are used now from Leapwing Audio. So, follow with me on screen. I'll show you the GUI, the graphical user interface of the plugin, and also the idea of operation behind the plugin itself. So, first of all, you're presented with 4 faders. The first 3 faders deal with subharmonics and are grouped, in fact, visually in the subharmonics area here. They're labeled sub, thump, and punch. And the 3 regions are divided by the crossover points you can see here, 10 Hz, 36 Hz, 72 Hz, and 114 Hz as per default. Now, what happens is, as you feed RootOne with an input signal, the engine of RootOne is going to generate subharmonics, which are basically an octave lower than such input signal. And depending on the frequency of the input signal, the subharmonics content will be placed in one of the 3 subharmonic regions, let's call them. Now, it's very clear if I feed the RootOne with a sinusoidal tone, like with a synth that produces sinusoid, because such synth without RootOne would generate a sound that is like this. So a very clean sinusoidal waveform with a sequence of notes occupying a specific frequency one at a time. Now, as I turn RootOne on, and for now disengage the harmonic section, just focusing on the subharmonic section, you hear that RootOne is going to introduce an extra lower octave. And as you could follow on the screen as well, depending on the input node, this lower octave will be falling in either the sub, the thump, or the punch region. And this is one of the cool features of RootOne. It gives you a fader to control the level of such region. For example, you want a little bit of thump, but you don't want so much sub. Or you want a lot of sub, but not much punch and thump because you already have enough from the input signal. On top of that, you got your dynamics control, which is how much the generated harmonic will follow the dynamics of the input, as well as an attack and decay time to control that further. Now, last but not least, you have got this drive. The drive is related to the other section, to the harmonic section of the plugin. Now, let's turn that on and let's listen to the example. As you can hear, there is a certain extra distortion introduced, which sounds like distortion, but really what it is extra harmonics generated by the plugin on top of the input signal, for which harmonics you also have extra control. For example, the drive, which decides the amount of these harmonics, the color, which decides the distribution of these harmonics, and the low-pass filter, which helps to tame, a little bit control the very higher harmonics introduced by the plugin itself. It will be very clear if I play an example here where I feed RootOne with just a single note, and I turn this off. You can hear and see on the spectrum the amount of harmonics generated, as well as the effect of the color parameter. It sounds like that on 0 you only generate odd harmonics, like you would expect from a square waveform, and with the full color control on, full on spectrum, second, third, fourth, and so on. So it somehow reminds me a bit of an oscillator in a synthesizer where you can, morph and modulate the waveform and generate all this different harmonic distribution. Now, so far, very cool. So let's take a look at RootOne in operation. So let's take a look at the session where I'm using RootOne for a very cool specific trick. So I've got this session here, and what I want to do, I've got a bass which has a lot of sub already, but it's a bit kind of rambly, it's a bit wild, let's say. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to first of all clean it up with a certain plugin called Soothe, and then I'm going to add the RootOne to purposely, intentionally add this subharmonic content back, but in a much more controlled manner, because now I've got faders to decide the level of each harmonic that I introduce with RootOne. So let me play the example. First of all, I'm going to play the example without the chain of plugins. And now the same with the chain of plugins on, and listen. I encourage you to listen to the example on headphones that have enough low-end extension, a full-range set of speakers, of course. But the idea here is that I'm going to solo the bass sound for a second. The idea here is that the first plugin cleans it up, and the second plugin brings back that sub information in a much more controlled manner. So if I switch on and off the plugins with the bass in solo, this is how it would sound. And again, the same part without RootOne. So, as you can hear, RootOne introduces the extra subharmonics with the fader set in this way. In this way, I've got a little bit less of the sub, low information, and a bit more of the punch information, as they're labeled, punch, thump, and sub. But on top of that, I got my saturation harmonics fader, bringing in a bit of extra grit, a bit of extra saturation to the bass, and helping the bass to cut through in the whole mix. On top of that, I got a bit of a drive here and a bit of color and a low-pass filter set to 460 Hz. So RootOne has many applications. This is one application I wanted to show you. It's a nice trick because it helps to clean up the sub low end, and then by using RootOne, you can restore this sub and make it much more controllable and more balanced in the overall mix. All right? So thank you for following me. I'll be seeing you in the next tip.